Welcome everybody from all over the world. Today we're going to talk or dive into a little bit more about adult development. And we're holding these gatherings once a month now up until the next conference. And maybe you all want to say something about the gatherings, why we're holding them?
Yeah, sure. So there was, as many of you are aware, in last spring in May, there was a Mindshift conference. The name was then Mindshift, but it was about growth that matters and the inner developmental goals, and that's when they were launched. And after that, there was a team of us with Fatima, and we also have Lotta with us here today. Are you here so you can wave, Lotta?
Yeah, can you say something?
Yeah,
so
there's Lotta. Say something, Lotta, so we can see you.
Lovely. Hi, everyone. I was just thinking on my way here that I would wave, and then I would ask you maybe to wave back. You know, hi, everyone.
Yeah.
It's a really nice little micro practice of, I'm here, I see you, we're connected.
Oh, great. And then we have Staffan, of course, is our Sumi today.
Hello, everyone.
In this group. And also Magnus, where are you?
Hi all.
So Magnus is the one who makes sure we all get the emails to connect us so that we can see each other here today. So basically the idea with these gatherings was to keep the conversation going, as you would say, and meet up and talk about these topics which the inner development goals are about. So the idea was to continue from the conference, and there was so many nice things going on at that conference. So we added some things in September where you could participate in the sessions that were there. And then we had the first open gathering right before Christmas.
Yes.
Last year, yeah. And this is the second gathering, and we'll have more, right?
Yes, we're going to talk about that at the end. There's going to be one in February, the 24th of February. We can remind you at the end. It's going to be exciting, but I will tell you at the end what it's about. Yes.
All right, but let's see who are here. All of us who are here. Stefan, can you see how many are in the meeting right now?
Sorry, classic, I was muted. We're 185, and still counting.
All right, great. So we thought we'd like to give you all an opportunity to check in, and we'll use the chat for that. So if you were to just write, where are you calling in from, and why are you here? What brought you here today? So please write some things about that in the chat so that we can connect a bit to our intentions on why we are here. And put that in the chat.
Perfect. And while you're writing, I can tell you that at the end, Jan Artem, who is the CEO of the IDGs, he's going to tell us a little bit more about the whole process of the IDGs. Where are we right now in developing, doing the next survey, so on. So he will tell us a little bit more about the whole process.
All right. So we have...
So, yeah.
Yeah, we have some things in the chat here. We have Sally from the UK. You're passionate about the importance of inner development. We also have from Sweden here, adult development is the key to what we are manifesting in the world. Somebody's here just for general curiosity, of course. Somebody's here empowering a decentralized IDG movement through tech and so forth. So you can all check out the chat there and read more about it. But without further ado, I think we should shift to our main speakers who we have here today. And Jonathan, you and I with a few others were at Ekskäret, the island here in the Stockholm archipelago, where this initiative was seeded. And there were all these bright thinkers there, and I felt a bit lost in the middle of everything and thought I wanted to learn a bit more about adult development. And we met outside the shower there, and you gave me a very valuable tip about an article, which I actually read, but for now I can't figure out the title of it. But I just want to thank you for that tip. And to me, that's part of your generosity and your contribution to this whole community. So with that, I will hand it over to you. And you've brought a friend of yours with you here today also.
That's correct. Thanks, Johan. I remember that conversation well. I have no idea what the article was. There's so many options. But what I would say is I've been about 25 years studying adult development now, and gone on a long journey from seeing it in relatively early, simple ways, understanding kind of big chunks and simple distinctions, to getting more nuanced views. And on that journey, I think about 3.5 years ago, I was in London at a conference for the European Society for Research in Adult Development, and was sitting, afterwards in a restaurant, and different people were mingling. And then this crazy guy here, Mike Mascolo, sat down across from me, and I think it was kind of like a force field appeared, and nobody could come in. It's like we were talking and we couldn't stop. And we've been talking since then. And when the opportunity came to invite somebody, I grabbed Mike and said, hey, be my buddy here, because this is somebody I've been learning some of the more nuanced and advanced understandings of what I see as the kind of rich, more mature understanding of what adult development looks like. And so, Mike, say a little bit about yourself.
Greetings all. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you, Fatima and Johan, for inviting us. I am a developmental psychologist. I study development throughout the entire lifespan. I adopt a neo-Piagetian and cultural view of how human development occurs. And I'm also very much interested in how we develop through conflict, both internal conflict and conflict between people. So that's me. And I'm looking forward to talking with you today.
Great. And so we've got some slides. Stefan, are you able to allow Mike to share slides or share screen? Yeah, okay. I'm going to make a few remarks just to contextualize. So in the preparations, Mike and I were having some conversations, and what I thought was quite interesting was we were going back and forth trying to think of how to approach this and what is the theme going to be. And I said something, he says, oh, that has energy. And so do you want to bring the slides up?
I'll do it.
So we thought about, how do we enable development in the middle of everything? This is what we're thinking about. And so because our lives, we often think about, well, I'll go to a class, or I'll take a retreat, or I'll do something. And what we do is we often look outside ourselves for solutions in programs designed by experts. And what I said was, don't do that. The solutions to the challenges you're facing are hidden in plain sight. And how do we develop the ability to see them? And then how do we develop the capacity to not only see solutions, but to also understand how to develop through addressing them? And a favorite quote from Keegan and Leahy that I like is that these are not problems for us to solve, but problems that can solve us. And with that, Mike is going to take us through some connection to the inner development goals, a little bit of understanding of what do we mean by development, some examples of that, and then what is a simple practice we can use to be able to help ourselves develop in the middle of everything. And then we're going to go from there into some breakouts and let you have some time to talk about ways you recognize this process in yourself, can enable it, and so on, support others with it. And then we'll come back and invite some more stuff in the chat that we can reflect on and connect with and hear some more voices and maybe even a couple examples. So with that, take it away, Mike.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Thank you. First, I want to say again, I'm so happy to be here and I'm honored to be here. I think that the Inner Development Goal Program is an important, integrative, thorough, and very much needed set of tools and ideas. And I'm happy to be here as a part of it today. One small housekeeping thing, if you will, we have a lot of people from all over the world, and I tend to speak fast and I speak in English. Please, If I'm speaking too quickly, please say so. Indicate it in the chat, or someone like that, something like that. Someone will slow me down. I'll do the best I can.
Or I'll slow you down.
You'll slow me down for sure. So where are we going? What's going to happen today? So first of all, let's look at the, we have these 23 wonderful internal development goals. They're great goals. They're important. They're classified into 5 categories. One might look at them and go, wow, this is great. How can I use these? It feels overwhelming. It feels like a lot. And the same is true of adult development. When we look into adult development, there's a lot of steps and processes that are going on. It can be overwhelming. It can be overwhelming. And we say, don't worry. Skills are something that develop in the middle of everyday life, in the middle of everything. It would be a mistake, we're suggesting, to look at each of the goals, if you will, and devote some time and take a course in each one of these goals, for example, to develop your skills in them. It would take a lifetime, and it would be very, very difficult and overwhelming at the same time. Don't do that. Instead, let's focus on how skills can develop, how your inner development goals can develop in your everyday life, in the moment, in the now, right now. That's where we're going to go. We'll also talk a little bit about what development is. The answer is going to be progress towards some outcome. We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about, in general, how development and how adult development happens, especially as development happens when things go wrong. We tend to think that development is something that we plan out and that we're going to have a nice set of sequence steps to move toward. Usually happens when there's conflict, when there's something that's not quite right and things don't go quite as planned. We develop through our relationships with others, we're going to talk about. Very important. And in the middle of everything. What we will introduce is this, what we hope will be a very simple tool called the action reflection cycle, or the experience reflection cycle, that one can use any moment of any day in order to reflect upon and develop the skills that you want to develop, especially the internal development goals. So without further delay, let's move forward. Okay, so the internal development goals. There's 5 categories of it. There's being, the inner compass, integrity, openness, self-awareness, and presence. There's thinking goals. If I'm going to be a leader, if I'm going to be a participant, if I'm going to be a person. Critical thinking, complexity, perspective taking, sense making, long-term vision. There's the skills of relating. Thinking may be something that happens in my head, if you will. Actually, it doesn't so much. But relating is something that happens between people. And part of the relating process is appreciating, developing a sense of connectedness, skills for connectedness, while at the same time being exhibiting humility and compassion and empathy. Relating isn't enough. There's collaborating. There's the co-creation of whatever solution and identifying whatever problem we might have at any given moment. This involves communication between people, co-creating, a mindset of inclusivity, trust between people, and the capacity to mobilize people toward a common goal. And then you got to put all this into practice. And that requires strength, courage, creativity, optimism, and perhaps, very importantly, an attitude or a mindset toward perseverance, especially when things go wrong, and especially in a world that seeks quick solutions to quick problems, perseverance over time. So these are the 5 categories of inner development goals that you are all likely very familiar with. And then we look at them, at least I look at them, and I go, wow, and that's a double wow. It's a wow, those seem really targeted. They're great goals, but how am I going to learn them all? It feels like, oh my God, I've got this big task in front of me. It's never ending. What can I do? And let's try to make it less overwhelming. Let's try to make it something that's natural, that can happen in everyday life. That's our goal for today. This slide here is a slide to simply show you how complex development is in general, let alone adult development. And the types of theories and thinking that I work with a theory that says that humans and human skills develop through 13 levels. 13 levels. And every single skill that we have develops through multiple levels. And they don't develop all at once. They develop in different contexts and different areas. The skills that I have for collaborating are different than the skills that I have for being, which are different than the skills that I have for persevering and emotional regulation. And they all develop through these pathways. How complicated. And I could go through and give you a stage analysis that many adult developmental theorists do of how skills develop. And we can give you a sense of how cooperative skills develop through the lifespan. And that would be interesting. I'm not sure it would be useful in how it is that we cultivate our skills in everyday life. And so this is complicated stuff. Again, our goal is let's see if we can make it less complicated. And the first way to make it less complicated, it seems to me, is to think of the inner development goals. The inner development goals is a kind of a library, a reference room, a reference resource, a big book that you put in your backpack and you carry it along with you, or maybe in your cell phone that you carry along with you. It's not something that needs to be in the front of your mind all the time, but it's there. It's there to consult with. It's there to interact with. It's there to commune with whenever you need it, and we need them all the time. And so we suggest, first and foremost, the first way to make the goals more manageable is to not embrace them all at once, but to put them in a box on your shelf, very accessible, so that you could be taking them back and putting them in at any time. So you've got the reference librarian there saying, consult me as you need help, okay? And then defining when we need help becomes the important question. Okay, let's start with some adult development theory. Not a real lot, because I want to keep it as simple as we can. So adult development theory, there's nothing as practical as a good theory. And the inner development goal framework is a good theory. It is better to have a good theory than it is to have a bunch of practical tips. Why? Because tips only tell you little ideas of what to do in particular contexts, but they don't tell you the whole. If you have a good theory, you can always rely on your theory in order to figure out what you need to do. Tips are not integrated. Nothing as practical as a good theory. Let's start with this question. What is development? What is development? Well, people talk about it in a lot of different ways. We're going to talk about it in a very particular way. And that is that development is progress toward an outcome. Progress toward an outcome. Here's your outcome, and it's progress toward an outcome. Now think for a few minutes, if you would. We tend to use the word development almost as a synonym for change. Anything that changes, we often say, is developing. It's not true. We often use the term development as a synonym for growth. Okay? Well, wait a minute. Development involves growth, to be sure, but development is not just growth. You know, when they invented the microscope, they actually took sperm cells and they put them under the microscope and they looked at them. And the microscopes were crude. And they looked at the cells and they thought they saw little tiny human beings in the sperm cells. And that all development was a matter of these little tiny, fully formed human beings getting bigger, growing, getting to be more, getting to be bigger. That's not what development is. Development involves a different type of change. Different type of change. Development isn't just history, change over time. Because we can talk about the history of nations, and we could talk about the rise, if you will, of the Soviet Union, and then its collapse in 1989. Well, what do we have there? We don't have development. We have development and then decline. History isn't the same as change, as development. Development is progress toward an outcome. So you got to have progress and outcome in mind when you're thinking of development. So again, just to show you, development isn't just growth. It's not just more of the same or something getting bigger. Here's a triangle, and we see that the triangle is getting bigger. But no one would say that the triangle is developing. It's changing, it's getting bigger, but it's not developing. So what would development be? We see this example here of the person's hair is growing. I wish my hair were growing in certain places, but we see that the hair is growing. The hair, there's more hair, there's longer hair, but we don't say that the hair is developing. So change and growth and change over time is not the same as development. We see a pitcher, and we might begin to fill up the pitcher, and we're getting more liquid in the pitcher, but the liquid isn't developing. So then what do we mean by development? Well, what we mean by development is progress over time. Let's talk about progress and over time. When something develops, it's being formed. It's actually taking shape. It undergoes transformation over time. It undergoes transformation. What it looks like, how it's organized, is changing over time. So here we have a seed, and we plant the seed. There's the seed. And then the seed begins to germinate and grow. Well, look, this looks different than this. The structure of it is actually getting different. And then as it grows, it has a stem, it has leaves, and then it begins to branch out. This looks different from this and this. And then as it moves forward, it gets the blossoms. It gets blossoms and thickness and bark, and then fruit. And what do we have here is that development is not just something changing, it's changing in a particular direction. And the structure, the organization of it, its parts, and the wholes change over time. Something much more interesting is going on with something when we say that something is developing than it simply is changing. We don't just want change, we want certain types of changes. Here is an example of how in development, the structure of something, its organization, is changing over time. Note, what do we mean when we say that its organization changes over time? Well, look, here we start off with the seed. When does a seed become when does an acorn become a tree? When does a seed become a plant? New parts, here's a new part, are differentiated from the old parts. New parts are differentiated from the old parts. New parts actually come from the old parts. You start with old parts, and then you differentiate them, you split them, you make them finer. This is what's happening when we develop. And it's what happens when we develop our skills and our leadership skills and our participatory skills. That whatever skill we have has parts, and we're going to get more parts. We're going to differentiate new parts from old parts. And then, here we go. The stem, the seed, the leaf is differentiated from the seed. And then we get further differentiation, and the bark becomes different from the stem, and the flowers become different from the leaves, and the fruit becomes different from the leaves and the buds. So development is a matter of parts developing out of earlier parts and then coming together into bigger and larger wholes. That's development. So development is a matter of differentiating making distinctions in, creating, inventing new parts of something, and then putting them together to form something new, something that didn't exist before. Look, can I do this? These structures, the fruit didn't exist before it existed, before it was formed. The fruit is not in the seed. A plant maybe is in the seed, but the fruit isn't in the seed, and the blossoms aren't in the seeds, and the leaves aren't in the seed. They are literally formed over time. They literally emerged before. They did not exist before they exist. Something that didn't exist before came into existence. And that's what happens when we develop ourselves. That's what happens when we develop ourselves. When we develop ourselves, we develop new, better versions of ourselves. We start with who we are now. We make distinctions in who we are now. We bring those distinctions together. And when we do that, we're at a higher level. And when we're at a higher level, we are a new self. We have a new self, or we're a new version of ourselves, and it didn't exist before it is actively created by us. New versions of yourself emerge from old versions of yourself. It's just, you cannot create a new self all at once. You cannot go to a lecture and someone lectures something to you and you learn something that you had no idea about anew. No, whenever we learn something new, we start with who we are, what we have, what we already have, and we make distinctions in that. And we come better and better and better over time. And so that we literally bring into existence new selves, new skills, new ways of being, connecting, relating, collaborating, and acting. That's development. It's a powerful notion.
Now, just pause for a moment and comment. I've been reading all the chat that is going on, and it's really interesting to see how people are responding and throwing in ideas. And there's a lot of rich discussion going on. And I would just say that much of this are things that could be unpacked and connected to over time, and we'll have some time to kind of have discussion breakouts with those and bring these questions back later. So there's a lot of good ideas bubbling in the chat. So carry on.
I just looked very quickly into the chat. I just saw this one thing. Better is an axiological, not a scientific concept. Boy, do I love that. Axiological means value laden, right? And we have this notion that development, that scientists are going to come in and we're going to find out what development is because we're scientists. We're going to look and we're going to see what a more developed state is from a less developed state. Not necessarily so, because what counts as development is in part determined by our values. What it is that who do we want to be? Who do we think that we should be? And as we developing is a matter of moving in the direction of those value judgments. And so a developmental process or a developmental sequence is defined not simply by what is in the world, but our values and who it is we want to be, what types of organizations we want to bring into existence. It's not simply a scientific process. It's a human process as well. It's a human process. Boy, I wish I could look at these comments more.
Oh, that's my joy at the moment.
It's your joy. How does development happen? So if development is progress over time, how does it happen? Well, one thing that development happens is when things go wrong. Conflict is a wonderful motivator of development. So you get A, I get belief A, I have skill A, and when I get conflict, and conflict can be anything, you think, oh, I am trying to drink a cup of coffee, and it spills. Conflict. I am trying to do a jumping jack, but I fall over. Conflict. Trouble. I am trying to manage a team, but I'm getting resistance, conflict. I'm trying to get a projection for sales, but we're losing customers, conflict. So that when there's conflict, we look at our existing state. And the conflict tells us, if you will, where we got to go. So that if I am interacting with my employees and I give them orders about what to do, please do this, and I find that I get resistance from them, well, that resistance is informative. I have to start with where I am. I just gave an order. They didn't follow it. Well, maybe I can begin to shift and differentiate what I did. My order didn't work. Let's do an experiment. My order didn't work, but something else might work. When we get conflict, we begin to split and differentiate our ideas and our skills and begin to be able to put them together again. More on that later. How does development happen? Through our relationships with others. I can't emphasize this enough. We often, especially in the adult development world, we often think about development as something that happens in me, in the individual person, through my thoughts, by planning. I may have an inner development goal. And what I do in order to develop it is that I put it in my head, and then I continue to try to build new skills by myself. It doesn't happen that way. Anything that develops is always developing through our relationships with the world and through our relationships with other people. We need other people to develop, and they need us. Why? Because behind the face of any person is an infinity. Behind the face of any person is more than we can fathom. Behind the face of this unique person that I'm interacting with is so much knowledge and feeling and experience that I don't know and that I don't have, that the moment I interact with you, you come up with something I don't expect. And if I'm open to that, I have to constantly be revising myself. I have to constantly be revising who I am in order to accommodate and to interact with you. You are constantly my teacher. I am constantly your teacher. So if we're here, we develop through our relationships. I interact with you, you interact with me. I begin to change a bit. You begin to adapt to me. I adapt to you. We adapt to each other over time. Over time, we cannot develop alone. We can only develop with others. A child does not develop the capacity to be autonomous, to be independent by being left alone. A child develops the capacity to be independent, to be autonomous by being taught how to be competent in certain contexts, by being taught how to manage his or her frustration, by being taught to trust and care about other people. I develop through my relations. And we develop in the middle of everything. We don't develop, I like to say this, quite often in organizations and in nations and in governments, we see a problem and then we go and we try to solve it by creating a program. Okay, here's a program. Here's the program to fix poverty. Here's a program to fix COVID. Here's a program to make better leaders. Here's a program for how to engage in being. Here's a program for how to engage in cooperating. Here's a program to how to engage in acting. It doesn't work that way. We don't go to school and then learn it and then bring it into our daily lives. You don't learn tennis by somebody talking to you in a room through a lecture. You learn tennis by playing tennis. You learn tennis by playing tennis with other people, with a coach perhaps, and slowly revising what you do over time to the input and feedback from other people. So here we are. We're in an organizational culture. We're in a culture of values. We're in a culture of relationships. We're in a culture of goals. We develop in the middle of that, not outside of it. And we develop through our interactions between me and you and the employee. And then me, you and the employee, you and I take the employee over to begin to interact with the client. The client comes in. Now we're learning something different. We're learning something different in this interaction. And then I go away and the employee and the client are interacting by themselves. And then the process continues. In the middle of everything, it's messy. That the lives we live and the way we develop is in the middle of everything, in the middle of a mess. And we got to be able to seize control of that.
So I'm going to pause again for a moment. We're going to have a couple of quick examples so we have enough time for our breakouts and everything. And as I'm listening to this and connecting some of what I read in the chat, there are many lenses to understand all of these ideas. And what we're trying to offer here is what I've experienced in my journey through this, as looking through, kind of peeling back the onion and finding more core processes that are going on that can be seen in many different formulas and processes and lenses. So let's have a couple of examples, Mike, to make this concrete, and then we'll give them a principle and throw them into breakouts.
Okay, are we doing okay with time?
We're a little behind.
Okay. Thank you. Let's put this together. Okay, here's a boss. She's got her IDG knapsack on. She's got all those skills in there. Being, thinking, relating, collaborating, acting. She's got them as a resource. The employee comes. The boss says, do this task. Please go and mail this letter. Please go and do this project. And the employee says, yes. Yet there's conflict here still. Why? Well, because the employee is experiencing some resentment and the boss is experiencing the resentment. And maybe the employee carries out the task, but not with a lot of, not with a lot of initiative. What happens then? We're in the middle of everything. We're in our day. We have conflict. Now what do? We reflect. We reflect. Boy, when I say do this, because it has to be done, my employee does it, but there's resistance. I have to be open to that. And then I reflect. And where do I reflect? I go into my IDG goals. That's one place. There's 1,000 places that we can use to develop our ideas and our skills, but that's one place. So we do that. And then what happens? This is where we are just now. Same thing. We go in there and we find our relating goals. Geez, I'm going to need to deal with my relating goals. I'm going to have to try to perfect my relatings, my capacity to relate. Let me do some experiments. Let me do some experiments in the middle of everything. I'm not going to go into another place to do them. I'm going to do them right here. So I go forward and I do an experiment, maybe motivated by the internal development goal curriculum or what have you. Geez, if I state the problem rather than tell the person what to do, if I say, for example, we have to figure a way to serve our clients faster. Can you do this thing I'm asking you to do? You say yes. Oh, I get less resentment and I get compliance. I get less resistance. That's development right there. Where there was just one global silly idea, I have a more refined idea, and I'm beginning to get more complexity, higher level. I get less resentment. But wait a minute, I get flat affect. I'm getting less resentment, but I'm not getting any enthusiasm. I want enthusiasm. I reflect. What's that a problem of? That's a problem perhaps in collaboration. What can I do as I reflect upon, what can I do to get more collaborate? Let me try some more experiments, some of which may fail, some of which may succeed. Well, if I state the problem and I ask my employee for solutions, well, any suggestions about how we can serve our clients faster? I not only get quote unquote compliance, I get enthusiasm. She offers some suggestions, and what happens? oh, I've developed my leadership skills. If I state a problem and ask for solutions, I get more ideas I didn't think about, and I get enthusiasm. Development has happened. Note the developmental sequence here. Note what's happening. We start off with simple ideas. We differentiate them and connect them and create higher order ideas. We differentiate them and we connect them to create still higher order ideas. All in the middle of anything and not in a classroom. We get increasing and higher order complexity. And note the distinct, note what I've suggested here that can happen in the middle of everything. We start off with some appeal to my authority. As I get more developed, well, I may begin to take the perspective of the other. And then I'm beginning to develop collaborative skills, all without thinking in any organized way or getting organized training. It's in the middle of everything. And look, in such simple everyday context, look what develops in that thing, in that sequence that I just described. Very simple, the most simple sequences. In this one, we have openness. The boss is open and is getting increased self-awareness, developing his or her critical thinking and complexity and awareness of perspective, developing an appreciation for the other, increased connectedness, humility. Oh, my employee thought of something I didn't think of. I've got humility and compassion, and so on and so forth. So much develops right in the moment. I'm going to skip this. And Jonathan, did you want to say something else before we go into the final?
Sure. So, I mean, part of why I like this approach is one of the things when I first encountered developmental theory many years ago was I would read things like, okay, Robert Keegan talks about going from a socialized to a self-authoring mind, but it takes at least 5 years if you work really hard and you do things. And there are these important distinctions, but a bit, you know, what do you do now? You know, and yes, there's sort of things, or you can coach people and a lot of kind of stuff can happen. But more and more, I found that by getting granular, by being in the micro moment, it was very important to do this. And then what I was looking for, what are some simple principles that can be used to stimulate this micro developmental movements that make more complex connections, more links in our relationships and our own thinking and our perspective taking and seeking. And so the idea of a reflection experience cycle is a very simple way to do this. And so what we want to do is present this and offer it as a practice, and then put you into breakouts with a couple of questions related to all this and give you guys some time to talk with each other.
Great, Jonathan. Yes. So I almost want to say, now forget everything I said to you. It just kind of sets up this. I mean, it's there kind of in the background. In a sense, I think this is what's most important. And it's our attempt to try to be as simple as we can in a way to empower people to develop through their own actions and through their relatings with others in everyday life. The experience reflection cycle. In anything we do, we can engage in these two processes, reflecting and acting, reflecting and experiencing. In our everyday lives, right this moment, we are experiencing. I'm experiencing you, I'm acting, I'm experiencing you, I'm experiencing my own emotions. And later on, maybe now even, I can reflect. So I act, and then I reflect upon my actions. And this process, this is the experience reflection cycle. I act and I experience, and then at some time after the experience, I reflect upon what happened and how I can do better. That's the experience reflection cycle. It happens spontaneously. It happens all the time. We tend to experience and act more than we reflect. Reflecting is a skill we need to develop and a habit we need to get into. But that's all we mean by the experience reflection cycle. We circle back constantly between acting and reflecting, experiencing and reflecting. Now, here's another way to think about it. we have on the one hand our existing concepts and skills that we bring to our situations. And we have our conflicts and successes that are occurring in everyday action and experience. And think of just another way to think of the reflection action cycle, think of it as a cycle that's going up and down, moving forward, moving forward, moving forward. And here's the idea. The idea is that in any interaction that I have with anyone, I bring my existing concepts and skills from myself, if you will. And then I bring them into action and experience. I bring them into everyday action and experience. And then something happens. I get success. I get failure. I get something in the middle. And then as a result of that, I reflect. When I reflect, I ask what went well, what went wrong. On the basis of what went well or what went wrong, I may change my concept and skill ever so slightly. I'll talk about this more in a second. And that change at that point gets carried forward into action. My life is an experiment. My life is a continual attempt to adapt who I am and what I already have to issues and problems that are coming up in my life. I don't get rid of myself when I change. I become a better version of myself. I act, I reflect. I bring the products of my reflecting into my world, reflect again. And the process continues. That's the reflection action cycle. Now, let's break it down into 3 more components that are very, very powerful in promoting change in individuals in relation to others. Here they are. We start off with our concepts and skills. Actually, that's not even true. We start off acting in the world, and then something happens in the world, conflict, some problem. That problem alerts us to our concepts and skills that we already have. When we have a problem, it exposes our concepts and skills. Oh my goodness, I thought that if I said to him, go do this, he would just do it. But I found that there was resentment. What am I assuming? What am I believing? I believe that I'm the boss. And if I say something, the other person's supposed to follow it. Well, 3 phases at this point. Notice. When I act, notice your concepts and skills in action. Just notice them. Notice how they're happening. That's step 1. I'll talk about this in a second. Step 2. Seek counter examples to your expectations, beliefs, assumptions, ideas, where they don't work. Step 3, experiment with new ways of thinking and doing in your world, in the middle of everything. Experiment. Some of those experiments are going to fail. Some of them are going to be successful. Can't have the success without the failure. These 3 steps, simple steps, we believe, they're very powerful in allowing us to develop in the middle of everything. For example, notice, step 1, notice how my ideas operate in the world. So there's our reflection cycle. We start. Tyler showed resentment when I asked him to do something. That's what happens, my experience, my belief, my reflecting. If I don't give specific instructions on how to get things done, they won't be done well. Here's my action. Here's the what happened. Now I've exposed my belief. I've reflected on it. That's what I believe. Notice. Now I've articulated my belief. I've articulated my concept. Let's just notice it. Let's go out into the world for the next week, for the next day, for the next whatever, and notice when I'm thinking this way. So I come back. Oh, I asked him to present at the meeting, but he didn't cover the important points. I asked Tyler that. See, I'm right. I'm right. If I don't give instructions or, I'm here, I'm saying that's an example of my belief in action. Notice it again. At the last meeting, I felt the need to give instructions. Again, yep, this is my belief. Just notice your belief in action. Become aware of it. Today, I felt worried that things would fall apart if I didn't take control. I'm going in and I'm simply identifying my ways of thinking, my ways of doing, and I'm noticing. Step one. Step two, seek counterexamples. I didn't feel the need to instruct Diana because I know she knows what she's doing. Counterexample to my need to control. My belief is beginning to change. If I don't give specific instructions on how to get things done, they won't be done well, is my belief. I'm worried that things will fall apart if I don't exert control. Oh, wait a minute, this doesn't comport with that. My belief is being challenged. I'm open. I didn't feel the need to instruct my supervisor because I think my supervisor knows what she's doing and she's my boss. I didn't expect Deanna to do such a good job at the presentation. Wow, what am I learning? My observations in the world are now conflicting with my belief. I don't feel the need to control people all the time. Sometimes people surprise me when they do well without my instruction. I notice, I seek counterexamples. Then the big one, experiment. Experiment with novel ideas and strategies. Again, what's my belief? If I don't give specific instructions on how to get things done, they won't get done well. I experiment. I gave Diana a little bit more responsibility and asked for her suggestions. She did a good job without instruction. Hey, that worked. I've changed. I've moved in a direction. I've moved in a value direction. Experiment. I asked for suggestions at the meeting, the place where I usually want to control everything. People had ideas that were better than mine. I'm beginning to be able to let go. So I move from my belief, now I'm actively changing and developing my belief. I don't always have to be in control of everything. I can be open to other people being competent. What does that say about me that I have to be in control of everything? How am I going to change who I am? What's happening is that through this simple process of reflection and action, through noticing, seeking counterexamples, and experimenting over time, and it doesn't have to be in that sequence, development happens in the middle of everything. We consult our inner development goals, we consult other people, but the development happens in the doing. Where we revise our concepts, skills, and beliefs.
Okay. Big thanks, Mike. I love that kind of energy and enthusiasm, and reading a number of your papers and edited books and written books and so on. I see how many of these ideas come together, and I know how much more is behind it and how much it can touch on many of the things that have been going on in the chat. So Staffan, would you be so kind as to, we have written write comments or reflections in the chat, so we have lots of that going on. Staffan has just posted a couple of questions. Can you recognize a time in your life when you have used this kind of process? And I think many of you have touched on, like action inquiry or double loop learning. There's many ways in which this shows up. And can you maybe think of using it in more and more micro level ways? And then are there ways you might apply this process and principles to your current problems? So Staffan, if you want to throw people into breakout groups. So welcome back. I know from my own experience in breakouts that, nobody necessarily follows the instructions or rules or guidelines, but we anticipate you've had very rich conversations. And we had in mind, if we had a bit more time, to invite a few examples of how people might have been applying these kind of things and connections they might make to it. We're relatively short on time. We've been fascinated with some of the chat that has gone on. And what we think we would do is start with some commentary on the existing chat. And if you want to start adding things that have come from your discussions in the breakouts into the chat now, we'll weave those into the commentary. And so, Mike, there was one that you'd been talking about just before.
Oh, I was quite taken with a lot of. I was just absolutely blown away by these comments. I mean, they're just so remarkably. This one here, but with Dave Pendle and Ka Fainson. I still wish we could disambiguate development as something distinct from the modernistic notions of progress. Even from the examples, it seems to be very easy for development as presented to be co-opted into corporate life without anything beneficial happening for the whole system. Yeah, I think that's absolutely wonderful. I think that, you know, part of the idea of thinking about development as movement in a direction is that the direction is informed by value judgments, and that what we take to be development is always defined with reference to some endpoint, hypothetical, real, or imagined. And so what might be seen as development or progress from the standpoint of one goal or endpoint or set of values might be seen as regression from the standpoint of another. So I think that comment is really, really very, very important.
And another thing that I've noticed in relation to that and values is that what we value, so in Norwegian, values is sette pris på, set a price on. It's literally, you know, what do we put money on, so to speak, that we are worth investing in? And what I've observed is that what is valued is often what is kind of in our band of awareness. What are we either conditioned to notice? What does the kind of scope of perspective we have lead us to notice? So for instance, there's many developmental models that basically talk about going from noticing things outside ourselves to more and more humanistic noticing our subjective world. So people tend to value external acquisition of goods at a certain stage and often move into a process of valuing feelings, valuing relationships, and valuing intimacy. And then, in my experience, this can be connected to how these kind of complex interrelational micro-developmental moves bring those things more into awareness so people notice them and therefore value them.
You know, I want to say something about what you just said about what is it? What was it? Progress, the Norwegian idea. What I invest.
Set a price on.
Set a price on. Set a price on. To double down on the comment that I read, if you will, it'd be interesting to make a distinction between love. Love. What love is, in my opinion, is bestowing value on something. And love theorists, Irving Siegel, no, it wasn't him. It was, I don't know what it was. Make a distinction between appraisal and bestowal. And appraisal is you get the money value of it. What's the price of it on the market? But bestowal means I love the thing. I value the thing. I don't care what the market value of the thing is. You can't convince me not to love this house by telling me that it doesn't cost a lot. That's the type of valuing that I think we need. We need love values that define our endpoints, and we should not accept, you know, the prevailing conceptions of what constitutes progress.
Yeah. There's a comment here from Laurie that says, how do we invite others into their own inner development, in addition to working on ourselves, of course? I think this is, in this community, in this movement, a lot of why and how this came about is a feeling that we've gained something of immense value from this kind of work and being exposed to theories that help us refine our understanding and practices. How can we invite others in rather than beat them over the head with a book and say, you should do this?
Right. It's a great, such an important thing. How many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? The answer is one, but the light bulb has to want to change. So the question becomes, how do you get the light bulb to want to change? My suggestion, quite frankly, is conflict, and not hostile conflict. By introducing conflict into a person's existing way of thinking. In other words, calling attention or helping the other person, helping to call its attention to contradictions that are already in a person's thinking. Because when we do that, oh, I want my employee to be productive, yet I'm ordering them around. Simple example. Well, how do you put those two things together? That motivates from within. It's motivating from without because there's a conflict coming, but it's a gentle, I'm not yelling at you. I'm not saying you did something wrong. I'm not suggesting a path to go on. I'm introducing conflict to activate your own intrinsic ways of desire to resolve conflict.
Yeah.
That'd be my suggestion, Jonathan.
Yeah. Ansi from Finland made a comment. Isn't the amount of hierarchical differentiation and integration something that is just like temperature? There is no value in it, but there are some differences that we can describe. To say that there is more complexity in something is like to say there's a higher temperature.
Temperature is a quantitative notion. What's happening when we increase the temperature of something is we're getting hotter, more energy expended, etc. Development, in my view anyway, is not simply a quantitative concept. It's a qualitative concept, as indicated by the person who said it's increasing differentiation and integration. But not just any differentiation and integration. If we want to say that social skills develop, we have to have in mind some idea of what those social skills are. Those social skills are becoming better examples of themselves. They're becoming higher order relative to some outcome. So it's not just any, development isn't just any old differentiation and integration, all right? It's development toward some conception of what it should be. And again, we should change our conceptions of what should be as necessary. So development becomes a very complex, interpersonal, not just scientific, perhaps even political concept.
Well, there's something about this in the things I've been reading lately too, to really emphasize that it's a relational process. And when you talk about this in terms of science, I have a friend who published an article on quantum physics, taking a second person perspective and showing that even at the level of quantum physics, relational properties are what is driving activity. Here is a comment from Karina. How can we help sustainability leaders? Because part of the idea of the inner development goals is to achieve the sustainability development goals. So how can we help sustainability leaders reflect on their actions and take bold decisions, especially when we talk about different cultures that are not necessarily reflective?
Wow. I have two things to come up. One is what I already said about introducing conflict to the leader's system, and the other thing is part of conflict is to prompt reflection in such a way that sustainability. Sorry, I have to pontificate for a moment. It seems to me that our sustainability goals are going to be never realized until we're able to reflect upon ourselves and our own ideas and to realize that we must change our ways of life. And to change our ways of life means to change our values. I don't think we're going to get out of sustainability through greater technology alone. We need to transform our way of life. And to do that, we've got a challenge to come up with very, very concrete examples of what we're doing that will have to be changed. It's the best I can do is to introduce conflict into the minds of the decision makers. Plus, and it's part of that is what are we doing that's destroying ourselves?
So
I don't think it's a great answer, but it's the best I've got.
No, but I also think, I know someone in Oslo who was on the International Panel for Climate Change for a long time. This is her website. She's got a wonderful book out on quantum change. And she was really advocating to bring the term consciousness into the discourse on climate change. And so in terms of, efforts to try and bring that in. She brought scientific credibility of being on the IPCC to being able to introduce. Now, I remember it took 5 or 10 years of perseverance for her to continue to bring this up and get people to start accepting it. But you see more and more people now from the technology and starting to acknowledge just what you said. It has to be also a values change, a consciousness change, all these kind of things. Yes, Karen O'Brien, quantum social science. So I think we are out of our time, and we're going to hand it back over to Johan and Fatima to take us out.
Yeah, thank you. So, what do you say?
I was, should we really interrupt this?
Your sound is breaking
your
up.
sound is cutting, Johan.
Oh, yeah. So is mine and Fatima's?
Both.
Great. So thank you so much anyway. I've learned a lot and I've taken a lot with me.
We're not finished yet, but say that we send out a recording together with us, so you will all get them. And also I want to mention something about the next meeting. I promised to tell you what it will be about. And it's going to be, because they look really beautiful and happy and so on. But we all know that personal development, that's also about.
You're breaking. You're still breaking sound.
Okay. So next meeting will be about our shadow sides and our fallbacks. And we have Valerie Lindsay here today also participating and take us through the darker side ourselves to help us aspect of the IDGs. Now we also want to tell you a bit about how the whole IDG project is. So over to Jan.
Thank you so much, Fatima and Johan. Is my sound good to everybody?
Yes, it's excellent, Jan.
Beautiful. So as many of you know, we have divided the IDG co-creation process into 3 phases. And the first phase was to get the first draft of the inner development goals framework that we are reflecting on and working with and refining as we go. We're in the middle of the second phase of the IDGs, which is about the how of development, which will continue until September 2022. And now there is a survey out where we want to co-create a field kit with different methods and interventions on human development. And the survey, it took us many months in the scientific circle to create that. It has a lot of the reflection built into it. So everybody who has done that has said that they have learned a lot from just doing the survey. So I really want to encourage the 154 people still in the room to do it yourself. And please think about who are the 5 wisest people you know who could contribute to human development with connection to sustainability. And also if there is any networks where you could post this or help them spread this, because we need help to reach out of the Nordics, especially, and we need help to reach to experts in HR and sustainability to co-create a beautiful field kit that will be launched on the 29th of April. So please, if you're willing, if we can have the Inner Development Goals webpage in the chat, do it now if you have 15 to 30 minutes. And reflect also if you could be willing to spread this. We will send out another email with that. A few news on the 29th of April. We had a meeting with the board. We decided to take the risk. We think we will be able to gather some people physically, at least 500 people. And this is, sorry, my alarm. And there will be a digital sending throughout the different nodes and hubs of IDGs. We have Daniel Siegel, who already committed to speak. We will have Amy Edmondson on stage, Bob Keegan. Susan Cook-Reuter will be speaking on the next Growth That Matters. So there's a lot of names and people who've put their hearts and souls into this. So hope you want to join us. And my last shout out is we're really, really, really looking for more partner organizations. We have 23 now. We have IKEA, Spotify, Ericsson. We need more organizations to join and support us, and more countries. We have Costa Rica, who is on board. We want to find 4 more countries before the 29th, and there are going to be some high-level gatherings during March for that. So please reach out if you have connections to people in HR or sustainability, and we'll co-create. Thank you.
Thank you,
Back
Jan.
to you.
Thank you, Jan. This is a really exciting movement to be part of, and thank you for all the energy you're putting into this. And we're a whole team working on this, and I think Dora saved the chat and posted the chat in the chat to make sure that we all could read the chat. Thank you very much, Dora. I think it's very much in the spirit of co-creation and that we're all part of a community. And so we want to say thank you to all of you, and we hope to see you on February 24th, and then it's March 31st, right?
March 31st.
Yes.
One reason good. Yes.
So those are the 2 next gatherings. There might be another one, but then we have April 29th. So thank you very much, everybody, for being part of this today, and wish you all a good rest of the day and going forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you.